Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 25th installment of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links Best Deck series. Today I'm going to be showing you a competitive deck built completely around Toons. So a couple of things before the video starts. First thing I'd just like to say is this deck is by far the quickest King of Games deck I've ever played. I went from Plat 3 to King of Games in the space of 2 days without even trying to climb. I was literally just trying to try out the deck and it just turned out to be so good that it just ended up climbing very quickly. This would probably be because this deck is extremely quick. Most games are decided between turns 1 and 3, so if you're looking for a deck to get King of Games really quickly, especially towards the end of the season when you don't have many days left, I would recommend this deck 100%. This deck is really strong and really quick. Not to mention it's super easy to play. And without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so the best character for this deck is literally anyone, as the best skill for the deck is a universal skill known as Restart. Restart can be used only once starting hands are dealt and allows you to redraw your starting hand. So this skill is absolutely vital to this deck, as your starting hand decides the game 99% of the time. If you have a bad starting hand, you're going to lose the game. If you have a good starting hand, you're probably going to win the game. It's as simple as that. This deck is so heavily built around how your starting hand goes that if you don't have this ability, you're just going to lose a lot more games. As I go through the video, it'll become a lot more apparent as to why you need your starting hand to be good, as this deck is mostly built around Toon Kingdom, so if you can't get Toon Kingdom into your starting hand, or even any Toon Monsters, you just can't win. It's just not, you're not able to. Even top decking is just too slow, as most of your monsters can't attack on the first turn anyway, so you really need to get your starting hands in order, which is why having Restart as a backup in case your first starting hand is unplayable is really vital. Alright, now goes to the deck list. This deck contains 1 Toon Dark Magician Girl, 3 Toon Summon Skull, 3 Toon Mermaid, 1 An Owl of Luck, 3 Planet Pathfinder, 1 Toon Kingdom, 1 Soul Exchange, 1 Toon Table of Contents, 1 Toon Rollback, 2 Soul Absorption, and 3 Magic Reflector. So the first thing you'll probably notice is there are a lot of just one-offs in this deck. That's because this deck literally can only have one of most of those cards, as most of those cards there is only one available in the game. This applies to Toon Kingdom, Toon Dark Magician Girl, Toon Table of Contents, Toon Rollback, and I'm pretty sure you can only get 2 An Owl of Luck. I'm not sure about that though. The second thing you might notice with my deck compared to other Toon decks is I only run 1 Soul Exchange. I believe the card's a bit too slow to be running 3 of in the deck, as this deck needs to be winning early. If it goes too late, they'll get their spell destruction and destroy your Toon Kingdom, which just spells game over. The fact that Soul Exchange doesn't allow you to attack on the turn you cast it means if you're not using it on turn 1, you're kind of just wasting turns where you could potentially be killing your opponent, as this deck is very fast at killing your opponent when you have battle phases. And the argument that Soul Exchange is good removal for your opponent's monsters, well, is true, but it's kind of irrelevant for this deck, as this deck doesn't need to hit your opponent's monsters. It can just ignore them and go straight for your opponent's life points, which I'll talk about later on in the video if you don't quite understand yet, but basically this deck ignores your opponent's board completely and just keeps hitting their life points directly. So having removal is kind of a waste of time. Alright, now I'll go through the strategy of this deck. The strategy for this deck is very simple. Basically, you play a field spell fetcher to be able to draw your Toon Kingdom. You then protect your Toon Kingdom with magic reflectors so you can summon Toon Monsters which are practically immune to everything. So if you're new to the whole idea of Toon Kingdom, you're probably wondering why does this deck run 6 different ways of getting Toon Kingdom out onto the board? Well, basically Toon Kingdom makes any Toon monster you play untargetable and unable to die to battle damage or card effects, spell effects, anything. They literally make your Toons practically immune to everything. So as long as your Toon Kingdom is out on the board and is well defended by Magic Reflector, your Toons are just going to win the game. What Magic Reflector does is you can target one face-up spell card you control and place 1 counter on it. If that spell would ever be destroyed, you can remove the counter instead. This is a vital piece to the deck, as if your Toon Kingdom dies, it's game over. because your Toon Kingdom allows you to summon your Toons, it allows your Toons to attack, plus if Toon Kingdom is destroyed, any Toon monster you have on the board is also destroyed. So if you no longer have Toon Kingdom on the board, you have to just concede the game right there and then. Another thing if you're new to the whole Toon Monsters strategy is Toon Monsters can attack your opponent's life points directly as long as they do not control another Toon monster. So as long as you're not in a mirror matchup against another Toon deck, you can always hit your opponent's life points directly and just ignore whatever monsters they have. This is how the deck practically wins in the first couple of turns, because as soon as you get 2 of your powerful Toon monsters out, or even a couple of Toon Mermaids, you can just keep smacking at your opponent's life points directly every turn, until they eventually just die. The last part of the strategy to this deck is Soul Absorption. This card allows you to gain 500 life points every time a card is banished. So the reason this card is good in the deck is Toon Kingdom banishes a lot of cards. Basically, when you play Toon Kingdom, it sends 3 cards from the top of your deck and banishes them. So that's already 1,500 life points you can gain from Soul Absorption. Plus every time a Toon monster is destroyed by a card effect or by battle, instead of it being destroyed, you can banish a card from the top of your deck to negate the destruction, so that's another 500 life points you gain. Plus, most Toon monsters come with the downside of whenever they attack, you lose 500 life points, so it's good to have a way of gaining some life points back so you don't get too low, as the other way you lose with this deck is if you take too much battle damage, as you may be able to stop your Toon monsters dying to the battle damage, but you can't stop the battle damage going through to your life points. Alright, so if you don't understand the strategy in this deck yet, don't worry, at the end of the video there'll be gameplay which will pretty much show off this deck in action. Once you've played this deck once, you'll know how to play it. It's extremely simple, the strategy is actually extremely easy to do. But for now, I'm going to go through each of the monsters and each of the spells in the deck one by one to talk about why each of them are in there and what each of them function as in the deck, what role they have. And I'll start with the monster cards. So the first 2 monsters in this deck are Planet Pathfinder and an Owl of Luck. Planet Pathfinder is going to be the most common way of you getting your Toon Kingdoms out of your deck and into your hand. It's very simple, basically you play it, you can then tribute it, and add 1 field spell from your deck to your hand. An Owl of Luck is fairly similar, but it's also a lot weaker. What an Owl of Luck does is it's a flip effect, so you place it face down, and then the next turn you flip it, and it places your field spell at the top of your deck, ready for you to draw next turn. So you really want to use this effect only as a dire like backup, as you don't really want to be using this card to get your Toon Kingdom out of your deck, as it's extremely slow, and this deck does not like being slow. But due to how important it is to get your Toon Kingdom into your starting hand, it's kind of necessary to have at least another way of getting Toon Kingdom out of your deck other than Planet Pathfinder and the book, which I'll talk about later on. The final use of Planet Pathfinder and an Owl of Luck is they're both really good cards for tributing to summon your bigger Toon monsters. What I didn't mention earlier is when you summon a Toon monster, it all counts as special summoning, so you can summon as many Toon monsters as you want during a turn. So you can play your Planet Pathfinder, and on the exact same turn, you can then tribute summon a Toon monster. So it's very good to have just a spare one of these in your hand if you've already got your Toon Kingdom, as you don't really want to be trying to tribute your powerful Toon monsters to summon Toon monsters. The last 3 monsters in this deck are your Toon monsters. The first 2 Toon monsters share very similar traits. They both cannot attack on the turn they are played, both lose 500 life points every time you attack with them, and all 3 of your Toon monsters will die as soon as Toon World is destroyed. And also, all 3 of them can attack your opponent's life points directly unless they control a Toon monster. Toon Mermaid is not only a good monster to use to attack your opponent's life points to kind of chip away for your big Toon monsters to just kind of kill him, it's also a good tribute monster for your bigger Toon monsters, as you can special summon your Toon Mermaid, and then on top of that you can special summon your Toon Summon Skull on the exact same turn. There's not really much to say about the first 2 Toon monsters in this deck other than Toon Mermaid, when you cast it, you're probably going to want to put it in defense position as its attack power is fairly low at only 1,400. But both these Toon monsters have a very similar role. You're basically going to be playing them to try and just attack your opponent's life points directly and win the game. The last Toon monster, on the other hand, Toon Dark Magician Girl, is a lot different to the other two in that it doesn't lose life points when you attack with it, and it can attack on the turn it is summoned. Later in the video, I'll talk about how this can lead to you being able to kill your opponent on the first turn, as there's a card that allows you to attack twice with a Toon monster, so you can literally cast your Toon Dark Magician Girl and then hit the opponent twice on turn 1 and you win. Toon Dark Magician Girl is by far the most powerful of your Toon monsters, even though its attack power is less than Toon Summon Skull. This is purely because, 1, you don't lose life points when attacking with it, so you don't need to worry about that downside. And 2, it puts your opponent on a 2-turn clock as soon as you cast it. It means as soon as you play it, your opponent has 2 turns to either win, or he'll just lose to you attacking his life points twice. Whereas Toon Summon Skull can be, most of the time, 3 turns, if not more, because your opponent gets an extra draw, so he gets more chances at drawing cards to negate your attacks. There's also a small upside to Dark Magician Girl that's a bit unnoticed. It also has the same effect the actual Dark Magician Girl has, whereas if you have any Dark Magician monsters in either player's graveyard, it gains attack for each of them. This effect is really not that useful as Dark Magician isn't really in the meta, but if ever Dark Magician becomes a popular card or Dark Magician of Black Chaos becomes a popular card, this effect might become a little bit more useful. Alright, now let's talk about the spells and traps in this deck. So I've already spoken about Toon Kingdom, but I'll kind of go over it briefly again. What this card does is once it's on the board, any of your Toon monsters become untargetable by card effects, and if any of your Toon monsters is destroyed by a card effect or by battle, you can just discard 1 card from the top of your deck and banish it to keep your Toon monsters alive. This is what the deck's built around. This card is what makes this deck viable and what makes this deck so strong against pretty much every other deck that currently exists in Duel Links. Toon Table of Contents is an extremely powerful card in this deck. Not only is it another way of getting your Toon Kingdom out of your deck, it also allows you to choose any Toon monster for any situation. What I mean by this is there are 5 scenarios that you can look at when you're casting your Toon Table of Contents. First of all, do you have Toon Kingdom? If not, you can use it to get your Toon Kingdom from your deck. The second one is if your opponent has a minion on the board and you have a Soul Exchange in hand, you may want to choose to get your Toon Summon Skull out of the deck. I'll talk about later on why Toon Summon Skull is the one that's best for Soul Exchange. If you don't have any monsters to tribute to summon your bigger toons, you can get a Toon Mermaid from your deck. If you already have a big powerful toon on the board, you can grab a Toon Rollback from your deck, which can allow your monster to attack twice for an instant lethal. And the last scenario is if you have no big toon monster in your hand and you already have monsters to be able to tribute, you can just grab your Toon Dark Magician Girl from your deck. Magic Reflector is a vital piece to this deck. I've talked about it before. What it does is it allows you to target 1 face-up spell card you control and place a counter on it, so if that spell is destroyed, it will destroy the counter instead. So you're always going to use Magic Reflector on your Toon Kingdom to stop it dying, as if Toon Kingdom dies, you lose the game, it's game over. Soul Exchange allows you to target 1 monster your opponent controls and use that monster as a tribute for any tribute summon you do during that turn. The only downside to Soul Exchange is once you've used it, you cannot activate the battle phase. So as I said before, this card is a fairly slow card, so if you can't use it in the first turn, you're probably not going to want to use it at all. As once you've used it, your opponent, you can't use your battle phase, so you can't use your win condition, and the longer the game goes, the more likely your opponent is to be able to destroy your Toon Kingdom, so you kind of want to end the game as quickly as possible. So if you can't use Soul Exchange on the first turn, or even maybe the second turn, you're not going to want to cast it at all. Soul Absorption I've talked about before, but I'll go over it again briefly. Basically, as soon as a card is banished, you gain 500 life points for each. This is for you or your opponent banishing cards, keep that in mind. And this deck does a lot of banishing. If any of your Toon monsters is destroyed by anything, you can banish the top card of your deck to negate it being destroyed, which will give you 500 life points. Toon Kingdom, when you cast it, it'll banish 3 cards from the top of your deck. That's another 1,500 life points gained. All these life point gains are very useful with this deck, as you'll quite often take a lot of battle damage, so it's good to be able to heal back. Plus, a lot of your Toons do 500 damage to you every time they attack, so it's good to try and keep your life total fairly high. The last card in this deck is Toon Rollback. The reason this card's in the deck is pretty simple. It can allow you to kill your opponent instantly. If you have a monster with over 2000 attack on the board, you can cast Toon Rollback on it, which allows it to attack twice during the battle phase. So you can just attack your opponent twice for over 4000 damage and kill him instantly. This is best with Dark Magician Girl, as it can be used literally on the turn you cast Dark Magician Girl for a 1-turn kill. The last thing I forgot to mention earlier is with Soul Exchange as to why Toon Summon Skull is the best card to use with it. Basically, your other Toon monster to use with it, which is Toon Dark Magician Girl, can attack the turn she has played. So using Soul Exchange with her is kind of negative synergy, as Soul Exchange doesn't allow her to attack the turn she has played. Whereas since Toon Summon Skull cannot attack the turn it's played, you might as well play it during the turn you can't attack anyway. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for this deck guide. If you want to see gameplay of this deck in action, or you don't understand how it works, just stick around. There'll be gameplays at the end of the video. Probably 3 different gameplays I think, maybe 4. But anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.
Duel! Duel! Duel!